Welcome, everyone. My name is Betsy Miller. I'm one of the aromatherapists here at Or Acacia. I'm also a clinical herbalist. I've been with Or Acacia for about 8 years now and involved in the plant world in one way or another for over 20 years now. I started studying plants when I was around 12 and never looked back. I love all things plants. So it's so much fun for me to have 30 to 45 minutes this evening with you all just to talk about plants and my love of plants and how amazing they are. The focus of tonight's class is going to be on middle notes in aromatherapy. And we'll get to what those are. But first, I want to just start telling you a little bit about Or Acacia in case we have anyone new to not just the essential oil world, but to Or Acacia as well. Or Acacia, we are part of Frontier Co-op, so we are a co-op as well. I like to say that Frontier is like our mothership. And then under Frontier, we have Or Acacia, us, Simply Organic. They do like the vanilla extract and the taco seasoning, love the taco seasoning, as well as Plant Boss, which does like meat-free alternative. So as a co-op, I love being part of a co-op. We're member-owned. So we know that we're never going to be bought out by a larger company that would compromise the quality of our oils, the quality of our education around our oils, as well as, and one thing that's very important to me is our sourcing practices. It takes so much plant matter to produce essential oils that we have to be so conscious about how we're getting these plants. And one of the things that drew me to Frontier in the first place was their transparency and efforts into sustainable sourcing of plant material. So that's one of the things that I love very deeply about Or Acacia and Frontier in general. So that's a little bit about who we are. And again, tonight's class, we are going to be focusing on exploring our middle notes. So I'm sure we have a variety of experience in our audience. Some people are probably seasoned aromatherapy users. Some people are probably fairly new to the concept. So tonight's class is going to be a little chemistry heavy at first. And I don't want that to make you feel nervous. So the way I think about phytochemistry is the chemistry of a plant is just another language to learn, another language that the plants use to communicate with us. When we learn the phytochemistry of a plant, it tells us everything we need to know about its therapeutics, about how it wants to be prepared. So for example, an herb that's rich in mucilage, like marshmallow root, wants to be prepared as a water-based preparation, like a tea, as opposed to a tincture. Versus a plant that's rich in volatile oils, like what we're going to talk about tonight. They make wonderful essential oil extractions or tinctures, right? If we prepare them as a water-based preparation, we lose a lot of that volatile oil content. Doesn't mean we can't make teas with things like peppermint, because obviously peppermint tea is fantastic. But we lose a lot of the volatile oil content when we do that. So the phytochemistry of a plant is simply another language to learn to get to know these amazing green growing beings that I'm in love with. So when we talk about the phytochemistry of the plant, we know that plants with a certain chemical profile are associated with certain therapeutic effects. So when we're sourcing plant material to make these essential oils, we want to make sure that the plants we're sourcing and the oils they produce have a specific chemical profile associated with those therapeutic effects. What I mean by that is, I grow rosemary in my garden, right? I grow it for my own culinary use. I love picking fresh rosemary to use in my cooking, to make a tea out of if I want a rosemary tea. And I do have my own little still for it's called an alembic, my own home still for making essential oils. And I've distilled my rosemary. And it's okay, like it smells nice. But if I truly want the therapeutic effects of rosemary that we associate with memory and cognitive function, I want to source rosemary from the Mediterranean region, right? Because that's where that plant originated. That's where it's native to. And it co-evolved with the growing conditions of that region, the soil, the amount of sun it gets, the amount of rain, to produce this particular aroma profile that has these therapeutic effects. One of the things at Or Acacia we are very committed to is making sure the essential oils in these bottles have the particular phytochemical profile that we want for their effects. So we're publishing all of our GCMS results. GCMS stands for gas chromatography mass spectrometry. And basically, we put a sample of the essential oil into this machine, and it prints out a thumbprint of these essential oils that identifies to the molecule every single type of constituent in that essential oil. And we can see if it doesn't line up with what we would expect from that oil. There's always going to be a little bit of variation year to year, right? Because growing conditions are going to be different. Sometimes a region might get more rain and less sun, or as our world changes and the soil changes, we're going to see drastic changes in the constituents in our plants. But that being said, there shouldn't be drastic differences year to year on what those chemical profiles look like. So we know if we get a batch of, let's stick with rosemary, if we get a batch of rosemary, and when it's printing out this GCMS report, it doesn't have the particular spike in rosmarinic acid that we want to see, we know it's not what we're expecting from our plants and our oils. So all of that GCMS information is available for you all on the website. If you are a phytochemistry geek like I am, this is the kind of stuff that I go down these rabbit holes of phytochemistry and I don't come out for days, but I love it. So coming to the phytochemistry of middle notes, I'm going to get to the art of middle notes in a minute, but I do want to talk a little bit about the chemistry, because that is what determines whether or not an essential oil is a top note, a middle note, or a base note. So if you were in part one of our series with Elena, where we talked about top notes, she talked about terpenes, and in particular monoterpenes. So I just want to refresh a little bit of that information for those of you who are part of that class and introduce it to those of you who are new with us this evening. So terpenes are just a type of molecule. And I want you to think of molecules as like chemical emails, right? To our body, to our nervous system, to our brain, to different parts of our body. They're chemical messages. And terpenes are a particular type of message that they're a hydrocarbon, which means they are formed with only hydrogen and carbon. And the way those atoms attach to each other is what determines each particular terpene and the therapeutic effect that it has. So terpenes are such a wide class of compounds, and I wanted to get into them a little bit simply because I feel like the cannabis industry is, I love the cannabis industry, but I feel like they are suddenly popularizing terpenes, even though the rest of us herbal folks have been talking about terpenes forever. They're not unique to cannabis as a plant. So many different plants have terpenes. Practically every plant has some form of terpene in it, because they're created by plants and even some insects, which is really interesting. Even some insects produce terpenes, but they act as natural defenses for the plants. It's one of the reasons that a lot of plants cultivated for essential oil use don't need heavy pesticide application or fungicide application, because the plants produce these terpene compounds to protect themselves. They also produce these terpene chemicals to attract, right, the pollinators. So when we think of why we use essential oils, obviously we love their aroma. We use them for super fun things like skincare, but we also think of using them for protection, right? When we go outside and we take our fun mosquito spray with us that we've made, or attraction, which we'll talk about a lot this evening with perfumes. But these terpenes help the plant survive. And as humans, we've learned to channel the benefits of these terpenes when we distill the plants into these fun little essential oil bottles. So the types of terpenes that we have, Elena talked about monoterpenes last night. Oh my gosh, time has no meaning for me anymore. Monoterpenes were last month with top notes. So monoterpenes are very dominant in the top note category of essential oils, the first thing we smell in essential oil blend. So that would be things like limonene, found in a lot of our citruses, would be considered a top note monoterpene. Although there are some monoterpenes like pinene that we find in essential oils like rosemary, cypress, juniper, that are considered middle notes. So there are some monoterpenes present in middle notes, but they're not as dominant in them as our top notes. Sesquiterpenes are really what we're going to focus on this evening. So sesquiterpenes, they are a little bit heavier in their nature than monoterpenes. They evaporate slowly as opposed to very quickly, like our volatile top notes. And most middle notes, and especially base notes, are very, very heavy in these very heavy molecules, these sesquiterpenes. The ones that we find in our middle notes are things like chemazoline. I didn't have any of our German chamomile on me this evening because I really wanted to demonstrate this. But if you look at German chamomile and blue tansy and yarrow essential oils, when you pour them out of the bottle, they come out blue. No other essential oil does that except for plants rich in this particular sesquiterpene called chemazoline. And most of them are in the floral middle note category. We also have beta caryophyllene found in black pepper and lang lang. Lang lang is an interesting one. I adore lang lang. I put it on my pillow every night before bed because it just, I don't know why I love it so much. Lang lang kind of like walks that line between being a middle note and a base note because it's absolutely floral, but it's so like heavy and sticky. So most of our middle notes and pretty much all of our base notes are considered sesquiterpenes. So Elena will be getting more into sesquiterpenes next month when we talk about our base note class. And then terpenoids. That is really the heart of what we're going to focus on this evening, terpenoids. These are a subclass of terpenes that have another molecule added, like oxygen. So remember, monoterpenes, terpenes in general, are just the hydrogen and the carbon, right? A hydrocarbon. So terpenoids are the hydrogen and the carbon, and then you add something in, like an oxygen or an alcohol molecule. And that's what creates a different chemical class altogether, the terpenoids. So monoterpenols, they have an alcohol added as their extra molecule. So a great example would be the linalool that we find in lavender. That's what gives it that amazing floral lavender aroma, is the linalool. And the monoterpenols tend to be super abundant in our floral middle notes. The monoterpenols are also what we associate with that relaxation action. So any plant, and this is again, when you learn the phytochemistry of the plant, it tells you everything you need to know about it. When you see a plant that's rich in monoterpenols, you can infer that plant is going to have a deeply relaxing effect, which it just blows my mind, like how much we can learn from chemistry. We also have sesquiterpenols. If we think of monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes, just like those, sesquiterpenols are a little bit heavier than the monoterpenols, and they tend to be more abundant in the base notes, like cedarwood, patchouli, sandalwood. So if you've ever heard of like santalol, that's one of the sesquiterpenols in sandalwood. So again, all of this phytochemistry is the key to unlocking the therapeutics of a plant, whether or not we're using it as an essential oil, as a tea, which I'm going to take a sip of my tea. I know it's only August, but my toxic trait is pumpkin spice, and I am just eagerly waiting for fall to be here. I'm not a summer girl. I love fall, and I started drinking pumpkin spice in like July. So this is my current obsession. It's the Stash tea blends. I don't know if you've ever heard of Stash, but it's so good. This is their decaf pumpkin spice chai, and every night after dinner, I have to have my pumpkin spice chai. Okay, so the takeaway from all of that phytochemistry is that middle notes typically have a much more blended phytochemistry than our top notes that are monoterpene dominant, or our base notes that are sesquiterpene dominant. Middle notes, they're the middle, right? They have a little bit of everything. They tend to be most dominant in those monoterpenols. And overall, the middle note constituents have that relaxing, calming effect on our nervous system, as opposed to top notes that tend to be a lot more stimulating and energizing and uplifting. Obviously, something like sweet orange is relaxing, but it definitely like uplifts us and cheers us up more than like a chamomile essential oil that helps relax and calm and think of, settling down. Some examples of middle notes. Most of our middle notes are floral essential oils. So we think of like chamomile, lavender, clary sage, marjoram, geranium. And then we have things like rosemary and juniper. So there's a diversity with our middle notes. But again, for the most part, any essential oil that we get from a flower tends to be categorized into that middle note domain. Most of our middle notes are extracted via steam distillation. So Elena talked a little bit last month about how we get our essential oils, the process of getting them out of the plant. So just to recap that really quickly, most essential oils are made through this process of steam distillation. And that's actually why I have my tea here, because I wanted to demonstrate. So steam distillation is where we take all of our plant matter, right, of a particular plant. So let's talk about rose, because we're using that one this evening. So we take all of those beautiful, just harvested rose petals, and we put them in this big metal contraption called a still. And when the essential oils are still in the plant, I like to call them the volatile oils, because if you read like a plant monograph, which I recommend, like the European Scientific Cooperative on Phytotherapy, ESCOP, they have fantastic monographs, as well as the European Medicines Agency, EMA. So if you're interested in digging deeper into the science of these plants, I highly recommend those monographs. But so the volatile oils, they're actually held in these little capsules inside the plant, whether or not it's the flower petal, like in rose, the leaves, like in, no, this is leaf apparently, in peppermint, the roots, like for vetiver. So these little capsules in the plant are what hold the volatile oils. And when we put the plant in this metal still with water in there, right, like brewing a tea, the heat from the water and the steam releases, it bursts those capsules, and that releases those volatile compounds, those volatile oils, and they're carried up into a metal pipe via the steam, right? So when I'm inhaling the steam from this hot tea, it's been sitting here for a little while, it's not that hot anymore, but pretend I'm inhaling the steam, I'm actually getting volatile oils from like the clove and the cinnamon and the nutmeg in here, inhaling them into my nasal passages to target my olfactory bulb. So the same thing is happening when we distill these essential oils. That steam goes into a metal pipe, and that metal pipe then gets submerged in another tank of very cold water. When steam meets the cold temperature of cold, it condenses back into a liquid. That liquid will have the essential oil either floating on top or sinking to the bottom, depending on its specific gravity related to water. And then we filter the essential oil off, and then the water is what's sold as like a hydrosol or flower water. And I used rose as my example here because just a fun fact about rose, it takes about 1,000 rose petals to produce a single drop of rose essential oil. So when we use our rose essential oil this evening, just think about like literally channeling the power of thousands of rose petals in the preparation that we make. And I use rose as the example also because some of our flower oils are made through a process of solvent extraction. And solvent extraction, we have a few plants that essential oils that we sell made via solvent extraction. Rose is a good example. Vanilla is another one. And a solvent extraction means that we use carbon dioxide in its liquid state, and it's put with the part of the plant, so in this case, the rose petals, into a highly pressurized container, and that forces those capsules containing the volatile oils in the plant to burst, releasing the volatile oils into the liquid carbon dioxide. And that liquid carbon dioxide is then completely evaporated off, leaving no trace of carbon dioxide. and pure essential oil left. And what I love about this form of solvent extraction is that it doesn't use heat the way steam distillation does, because heat changes the aroma of the plant a little bit. So when I smell Rose Auto, which is the steam distillation of rose, to me it smells almost like too potpourri-ish, versus when I smell the Rose Absolute, which is what we're using tonight, and Rose Absolute is the solvent extraction. To me, this smells like I just stuck my face in some fresh roses, because it more closely maintains the integrity of the fresh plant oil. It's also you get a lot more yield when you do these solvent extractions, meaning you don't have to use as much rose to get the same yield of essential oil. So it allows us to be a little bit more conscious of our plant use, because we don't need to use as much. So those are the two primary ways we get most of our middle notes: steam distillation and solvent extraction. Okay, so getting to I don't want to say the fun stuff, because for me, like, all the phytochemistry is so much fun, but why do we love our middle notes so much? So a little pun here, getting to the heart of the matter. Middle notes in aromatherapy are considered the heart of the blend. It's what you remember most when you smell an aromatherapy blend. They're the scents that become present or noticeable when the top notes, the things that hit you first, like the citruses, begin to dissipate. They tend to be found in blends, again, used for relaxation, right? Think of rose and chamomile and lavender and all these just incredibly soothing essential oils. They're often used in massage and skincare or meditation, especially for meditation when they're combined with those grounding base notes like sandalwood or myrrh or patchouli. So overall, our middle notes tend to be soothing to both the nervous system, to the skin, anything that needs like everything's going to be okay. You want those beautiful floral middle notes. When we're making aromatherapy blends, middle notes tend to be about 40 to 60% of the blend. So they are the most dominant in quantity of the aromatherapy blend. The top notes, right? Those are the notes that the first impression of the blend. When you smell something, like I'm diffusing a blend back here that has a little bit of sweet orange and some peppermint and what else did I put in there? Blue tansy. And the first thing I smell is actually the sweet orange. And then after that dissipates, I start to smell more of the peppermint and the blue tansy in particular. So when we are formulating our aromatherapy blends, our top notes are going to be anywhere from like 20 to 30% of our blend. Our middle notes are going to be anywhere from 40 to 60% of the blend. Our base notes are typically only 10 to 20% of the blend. And depending on what base note I'm using, I don't even go that high because base notes are really strong, but we need them. And Elaine is going to talk about why next month. But the middle notes, when you think back to the way an aromatherapy blend made you feel, a lot of what you're thinking back to is the effect of those middle notes. Because again, they're the heart of the blend. They're the message that we want to translate through that chemical messaging, that chemical email. One really fun thing about middle notes is that they have such a rich history in perfumery. So most perfumes have been made from middle notes and then a lot of the base notes as well. But middle notes, if you go down the rabbit hole of like the history of perfume, it's so much fun. And I found this like one cool fact I wanted to share with you all, that in 2003, there was an archaeological project on Cyprus, which is the island where Aphrodite first set foot on land, the goddess of, beauty and love in Greek mythology, after her birth at sea. So she rode her beautiful seashell and set foot on the island of Cyprus. And in 2003 on this island, they discovered a perfume making workshop from about 1850 BC, which is the oldest one in the world. So we have been channeling the power of plants for medicine, for perfume, for just general enjoyment since like the dawn of human existence. And I love seeing the evidence of that in human history. So I had so much fun going down the rabbit hole of the history of perfume. And part of my takeaway from all that research was that perfumes have played such a core role in not just like the beauty aspect of human history, but in the religious aspect, the self-care aspect, the ritual aspect. So evidence of the use of perfume has been associated with burial, with birth, with status symbols. So the elites always had access to the highest quality perfumes, royalty, right? And they were used historically as medicines, because before we had modern medicine, we had plants. And when we think about how perfumes used to be used, we didn't have essential oil distillation like this until much later in human history. Historically, we did oil infusions, meaning these floral plants, they were picked and then they were immersed in a carrier oil. Like tonight I'm using grapeseed oil, but they were immersed in a fat. Sometimes it was animal fat, sometimes it was vegetable fat like olive oil. And that also extracts these volatile oil compounds the same way, well, not the same way, but in the same concept that steam distillation does. And they were anointed, right, on the body. So across ancient Egypt and Greece, the Roman Empire, literally every culture that had aromatic plants growing in their environment, which is literally every continent except for probably Antarctica. These plants were always channeled for ritual, for beauty, for commerce, just as much as they are today. So we have co-evolved hand in hand with aromatic plants. And I always think about that when I'm doing my blending. I think I literally feel like I am channeling hundreds of thousands of years of human history and relationship with plants, which, again, that's part of my geeking out over plants, but I think it's a beautiful metaphor. So tonight, let me take a quick sip of my tea. Tonight we are making a purely middle note recipe. Normally when we make aromatherapy blends, we do want to have a good dynamic between top notes, middle notes, and base notes. But tonight we're just reveling in the aromatic nature of florals. So we're using geranium, rose absolute, and lavender essential oils to make what we call our flower bouquet roll-on. Geranium, I personally think, walks the line between middle note and base note because it is so heavy. And sometimes I feel like rose can kind of teeter that top note line simply because it does dissipate a little bit easier. It's a little more volatile. But overall, these are all solidly our middle note essential oils. And I love each of these for their own reason. Geranium, I always think of as just very, very grounding. It's one of the oils that I like to use at night in particular, before bed. And I love how it blends with lavender. Like, I very rarely use geranium by itself because the aroma of geranium, it can be, what's the term? Not picky. It'll come to me. It can be off-putting to some people, and acquired aroma, like an acquired taste, is what I was going for. So I tend to not like it just by itself, but when paired with lavender, that's a little bit softer. The two together just smell like they fit. They seem like they're meant to be used together. And then you add rose into it, and rose I just think of as like one of the most beautiful smells, right? It inspires beauty. Whenever we think of romance, right? It's always rose petals. So I did see a comment, I think that was Elena saying, a little bit of geranium goes a long way. It does. Normally I'm like, oh, an extra drop or two, not a big deal. But there are a few essential oils like geranium, vetiver, patchouli, that if you go too much, you're going to notice. But rose, rose petals scattered on the bed or a bouquet of roses to show love. Rose is just always associated with beauty and peace, and relaxation. We have fortifying on the label, and I think that's especially poignant that rose on an emotional level is very emotionally fortifying. It's one of the ways that I use it most when someone is dealing with grief or fear or an inability to engage in the world. I think rose is very appropriate as an essential oil, using it topically in steam distillation, in a tea blend, getting the actual rose petals and using those in tea blend or the rose tincture. I love rose glycerates, which is the rose petals steeped in vegetable glycerin instead of alcohol. Rose inspires us to joy. It helps remind us of our calling to experience the sensory aspect of life. It rekindles our senses. It's a magical plant. I went on vacation this summer with my kids and my husband, and we got a beach house down in the Outer Banks, and it was on like a dead end street. So we only had to walk like a quarter mile down the street, and then there's the the little walkway over the dune to get to the beach. And on either side of that little wooden walkway was just like, a block in either direction of wild roses, Rosa rugosa, just growing along the beach. And they were in full bloom, and just like you could smell it, the fragrance, like I could smell it blocks away as we were approaching. And it was just magical. Okay, so this is a really, really easy recipe to make. The hardest part about this recipe, in my opinion, is getting the little roller ball out of the essential oil bottle, or not the essential oil bottle, the roller bottle. So hardest part is done. And then we are going to do 1 drop of geranium essential oil. 1. Okay. And the good thing is it's really easy to tell which cap came from which oil. Geranium is an unmistakable scent. And then we are going to do 1 drop of our rose absolute in jojoba. So this is the solvent extraction. And oh, I got an extra drop of rose in there, and I'm so fine with that. So one thing, lavender, rose. One thing I do want to point out with the rose absolute is that any of our essential oil bottles, we are doing a label refresh, which is really exciting. Our digital artist has come up with the most beautiful designs for our new labels. So they're going to start looking a little bit different. You're going to have the color strip more towards the top than down the side. But when you see the color strip with the yellow, that just means the essential oil has already been diluted in jojoba. So these are the only ones that are safe to put on your skin right out of the bottle. All of the rest of them have to be diluted in a carrier oil. The ones in jojoba do not. And then last but not least, we are going to do 2 drops of lavender essential oil. 1, 2. The recipe calls for fractionated coconut oil, and I'm actually going to use grapeseed oil. You can feel free to interchange any carrier oil you want pretty much. The only one I would say just don't use in this is castor oil, because it's so thick, it doesn't roll very well in the little roll-ons. But I like grapeseed just because it goes on nice and thin, like it's not as heavy in oil, and it absorbs really, really quickly. So I just substituted grapeseed. And we're just going to do, it's about 2 teaspoons. So I just keep squeezing until I see the oil reaching the top of the little label right there. And then we pop that in, give it a good shake. And now I could put this on right now, right? It's all blended in there, mixed together. Now let's just do it for fun. Smells delightful, but when I'm making perfume blends like this, what I really like to do, and I don't think people talk about enough, is I let it mature. So when you make these essential oil blends, especially for perfumes, because obviously when we're doing a diffusion, it's just going to go, right? We're not letting those oil blends mature in the same way. When we make a perfume blend, let it mature. And what I mean by that is let it sit, smell it in 12 hours, smell it in 24 hours. Sometimes I like to let mine sit for like 48 hours or more before I start using it, because it allows those oils to integrate, to settle, and for the full bouquet of the aroma to come out in its entirety and its complexity. So this is going to smell very different in 12 to 24 hours than it does right now, and it already smells amazing. Right now, I smell a lot more of that geranium because it's very dominant. But I've made this blend before. In the next 12 to 24 hours, I'm really going to start smelling that rose. And then it takes a little bit longer than that before I can pick up better on the lavender. So let your perfume blends mature before you start to use them. It's a really fun practice to see how the complexity or the note dominance of your blend begins to shift. So that's what I have for you all tonight in the amazing world of our middle note aromatherapy oils. They are definitely, I am a citrus girl. I do love citrus oils, but it's a little cheesy. My heart of the blend is with the flowers, the floral oils. I think they're just so beautiful and complex. I did want to show you all 2 books that I recommend if you really want to get deeper into understanding like the history of perfumery and the history of aromatherapy. I highly recommend this book called The Art of Aromatherapy by Robert Tisserand. Robert Tisserand, he started the Tisserand Institute, and he's one of the leading educators and authorities on essential oil use and essential oil safety. He's written an entire textbook on essential oil safety that I use in the classes that I teach. So this is, again, a fantastic book, The Art of Aromatherapy by Robert Tisserand. Hold that up there for a second in case anyone wants to write it down. Okay, the second one, if you want to get deeper into the phytochemistry, right, that amazing whole second language that we can learn about plants, I really love this book, Advanced Aromatherapy by, what's his name, Kurt Schnaubelt. So this is a really good book for digging deep into those different constituents. I'll hold that up there for a second in case anyone wants to write that down. These are both excellent resources for anyone who wants to take their aromatherapy education a little bit deeper. Again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We are going to be wrapping up our 3-part series on aromatherapy notes next month with Elena. She'll be back teaching us about our base note essential oils, those sesquiterpene dominant essential oils, and that will be September 14th on at 7:30 Central, again with base notes. And then we are still doing our Facebook Lives the first and third week of every month typically. So I'll be doing a Facebook Live next Wednesday at 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern, which is my time, talking about our oil of the month, which for this month is our Kids Focus Blend. So if you want to learn a little bit about our kids line, be sure to tune into that. You can also watch playbacks of all of our Or Acacia virtual classes on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel. And we have lovely, beautiful edited versions of these classes for you on our YouTube channel. So this one will be up in a couple of days. They just, they'll take a couple of days to fancy it up and put the recipes in there for you. So I hope you enjoyed the class this evening. And again, thank you for the opportunity to spend the past 45 minutes with you all just talking about plants, because nothing makes me happier than talking about plants. And we hope to see you in September, again, September 14th with Elena to learn about our wonderful base notes. So have a wonderful night, everybody, and a great weekend, and we will see you in September. Bye, everybody.